had a welcomed interruption? Like you are very busy or stressed out with a task at work, studying for an exam, maybe for finals, or maybe trying to finish the sermon for Easter Sabbath, and you can barely keep your eyes open or your mind focused. And then you get a text from a friend inviting you to go grab a bite to eat or get some coffee, or your spouse comes in the room saying, hey, I'm going to watch the next episode of that show that we like together, and you jump at the chance for a break because you really need one. Kind of just step away and refresh and then come back. Or if you're a procrastinator like me, any other fellow procrastinators out there? I got a few. All right. You don't even need someone else to invite you to be interrupted. You do it very well on your own. If it is not quite the last minute yet, if there's still some time to be used up, you find yourself looking for anything to do but what you're supposed to be doing. And I do not just distract myself with any small task. I get the urge, I don't know if anybody else struggles with this, to start big projects when I have no time to do those projects, and I should be spending time on the task that I'm supposed to be finishing. But I want to do anything to avoid it, so I will start these huge projects. Like this past week, I started to reorganize our pantry, which is like one of those nice walk-in pantries that wraps up in the stairs, and it just became this catch-all. We couldn't even walk in there. And you may have assumed this already, but the week before Easter is very busy for my line of work. I did not have any time to reorganize the pantry, and yet I found time to do that. Well, reorganize half of it, because I only had time to reorganize half of it. Then I had to get back to work. That's my problem. I start these big projects. Our front lawn is half mulched. Our backyard is half weeded. Our pantry is half organized, because I just don't have time to finish when I start. Pray for my wife, Amy. She has to live with this every day. So sometimes I welcome interruptions a little too much, and as I'm talking, realize that maybe I have some undiagnosed ADHD. But there are times, though, when it is a welcomed interruption, where you really, really need it. But then there's other times when you don't welcome an interruption. Like you have something very, very important to say. You've thought about it long and hard, and you're passionate, and the last thing you need is for someone to cut you off before you get that important point across. Or you have some incredibly important appointment to get to or task to complete. Maybe you are up against a deadline because you've wasted time procrastinating, and there's no more time left. You've got to get it done. Maybe there's lots of people counting on you. Maybe what you're about to accomplish is so valuable, so vital, that everything else must wait until you finish it. In those circumstances, you cannot afford an interruption. There is a part of the resurrection account of Jesus that fascinates me. It fascinates me because Jesus has a very important task to complete. One that I think is absolutely vital for him to do, that he should be doing ASAP, and yet he welcomes an interruption. If you have your Bibles, let's open and read that time where he welcomes an interruption. In John chapter 20, verse 11, which Linda just so powerfully and beautifully illustrated in her song, when Jesus encounters Mary Magdalene after he is risen. John chapter 20, starting in verse 11. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus says, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. Did you notice the important task that Jesus has to complete? He tells it to Mary. He says, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet" what?
Ascended
the Lord to the Father. Jesus has risen from the grave, but he hasn't yet done his ascension. Now, maybe that doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you go back and study the sacrifices in the Old Testament that pointed to the sacrifice that Jesus would make for us, that ascension is a vital part of the redemption process. This is particularly illustrated in the burnt offering. You can go back this afternoon, if you want some really good reading, open to Leviticus chapter 1, and you can read about the burnt offering. And you will be reminded there as you read it that the smoke of the burnt offering ascends to God, and it describes that it is a pleasing aroma to God. In fact, the Hebrew word for burnt offering literally means ascending. So a burnt offering sends smoke ascending to God for his acceptance. Similarly, Christ will ascend to heaven to receive acceptance from his Father. It is an absolutely important task to complete. Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene before he even went to heaven to have his sacrifice accepted by his Father. The text seems to imply that he's going to go up right after he visits with her and then come back down and visit with the disciples later that day and for several weeks after that to many other people. But before he even ascends at all, he interrupted the ascending offering of himself, the most important event in human history, to comfort and care for and commission Mary. Now he lets her know, I can't stay long. He says, "Don't hold on to me," which has been a text that has been misinterpreted by many people, because in some of the older translations it even says, "Do not touch me." And as we saw so powerfully in the play, Jesus is okay with people touching him and him touching others in order to change their life. A better understanding of what that word in the original language is not to be understood as touch, but cling. In fact, you get the impression, most scholars say that it's implied that they are already embracing in this moment. And Jesus is trying to tell her, look, you can't keep clinging to me because I still have something important to do. But even though he has that important thing to do, he is interrupting it for her sake. Just when you thought Jesus could not express any deeper, any more profoundly, his love for his people, as if the cross wasn't enough, as if conquering sin and death through the resurrection wasn't enough, he welcomes this interruption to have this tender moment with Mary, revealing yet again how much his heart is for his children. In his book, The Sanctuary and Salvation, Old Testament scholar Dr. Roy Gain says it. I don't know where that twang came out. Dr. Roy Gain says it this way. I was channeling my inner southernness, I guess I didn't know. He says this: Jesus is the ultimate good Samaritan. He didn't let his rendezvous with destiny keep him from turning aside to help someone in need. After all, helping people was the reason for his sacrifice in the first place. He didn't let his work of providing atonement for the whole world, important as it was, prevent him from caring for Mary's feelings. What an example of priorities. Do you think he is sensitive enough to care about your feelings? If you ever doubt that God loves you, remember what he has done.
Amen.